Hello and welcome back to the MAINcast episode 9. This is the first ever MAINcast separated from the SOS Theater Festival, but don't you worry, the SOS Theater Festival is coming back in August. Calliope, do you want to talk a little bit about the SOS Theater Festival and the MAINcast?
Yeah, of course. So we're really excited to expand this MAINcast from the festival and, doing it independently. But of course, we're going to be bringing it back in the fall when we have our second installment of the SOS Fest. And this time the theme is social media. So we're really excited to curate those events for you, and you will get more information this week about what shows are going to be in the festival starting on August 28th. And again, we will have MAINcast episodes every Tuesday leading up to the show, and then every show will be on Friday at 7 p.m. From August 28th to October 16th.
And now we're going to start the MAINcast. We have two amazing artists here for you today. We have Melissa Chalsma from the Independent Shakespeare Theater Company and Suzanne Wakefield, who is a professional costume designer in the industry. If they both could arrive here to talk and join us for the show. Hello, welcome. So really quick, can you give your personal professional background in theater? Either one of you can start that.
Okay. I'll start. I am artistic director of Independent Shakespeare Company, as you said, and I've been doing that for 20 years, I think. We started way back in New York when we were still there. My husband and I founded the company, and it kind of grew up as a theater collective of really artists interested in performing Shakespeare plays. Before that, I was an actress, and I acted in regional theater primarily, kind of across the country and a little bit in England. And I taught at Cal State Northridge primarily, and that's where I met you, Stephen. And so I taught in the theater department there. So I'm primarily, I started as an actor. I've since become a director and a producer, but I would say I still consider myself coming from the perspective of an actor.
Hi guys, I am Suzanne Wakefield. I am a costume designer. I teach currently at Antelope Valley College, which is where I met Stephen many years ago. And now I am going to be starting to teach at Cal State Northridge as well. And then I've just been freelancing for numerous years. I went to Cal Arts for my MFA and made a lot of connections that way. And I assist, I design, I do makeup, I do hair, I do directing, I do producing, but my main focus is really costume design. And I've been doing it since the age of 18, anywhere from Vermont to Santa Fe to Colorado, Utah. I've been all over, mostly just US, but I've had stuff that travels across the seas. So here we are.
Amazing.
So we wanted to start this off with something that's very, very new, but not so new anymore because it's already July. But are you guys working on any virtual shows lately, or have you? And we were just wondering, what your challenges were, or what is exciting about working via Zoom or other online platforms.
I'm currently working. We are doing the Artisan Theater Company, and with that is a 3-week. We're just finishing up our second week and going into our third week. We're doing a 3-week intensive with students, and they are actually doing a show. It's just lots of little snippets from Your Good Man, Charlie Brown. Only we won't be necessarily releasing it to the public. It's just stuff for them to work on, and then they will have links to that. When COVID hit, I was directing Your American Idiot, and we couldn't physically produce that in any which way or form because it wasn't allowed to be Zoomed. It wasn't allowed to be recorded. And I think public producing and stuff like that under these sorts of circumstances, it's a whole new spectrum of, is this okay to stream? Is it okay to record? Is it, there's all these new things that we have to consider. An American Idiot did not fit into any of those little nooks and crannies. We did a small thing from the telephone hour, and that was great. And that was a huge success. And that was with one of the high schools that I work with. Mm-hmm. So that's been my experience.
Mm-hmm. That is so, hearing about American Idiot, I know that must have just felt, you're in the middle of a project and then you can't kind of take it to its fruition. I know that's so challenging and emotional for all of the artists involved. And that's such a big project too. That would be really difficult.
Yeah, it was, it hurt. We were about a month out and the vocals were beautiful. I had a great cast. I had a great team. The visions of the show were really beautiful. And Damn Yankees was the other show I was about to open, and that was 3 weeks from opening, and that was just for costumes. So I've lost, I think, 3 shows or possible shows during quarantine that has been extended. And I mean, it keeps hitting.
Yeah, it's so challenging. We were working on Macbeth in our indoor studio. We have it's a flexible space, but it's about 80 seats, generally speaking. And we were, I think a week out of going, we were almost into our tech week when we closed. And we spent a little time, still meeting, doing kind of rehearsals on Zoom. But then it sort of became clear we wouldn't be able to get back to performing. And we haven't really picked up with that show yet. I hope we get back to it. It was the same thing, where you have this beautiful cast of artists or this beautiful collective group of people working on something. And it's really, you sort of feel sad about it. But at the same time, I know when we get back to it, it'll be a completely different play because the world has shifted so much, so then you end up reevaluating it, I think. So that is really challenging. And I think, for us too, this year, this is really the time when we would have been, where are we? It's July. We would have opened one of our shows in the summer. We would be really close to opening the second production. We would have already, hosted, 20,000 people at the park, I would think, something like that. So it's really hard, it's odd to think that that's not happening. So we looked at that. And I think also for some, we're a nonprofit theater, right? So we have gotten some grants around the programming that we do. So then we have to, of course, look and say, what are not just our obligations to our artists, which we very much feel like we want to continue to employ our artists. What are our obligations to our audience? Because we have people we know who love to come see theater, as you guys all know that. And then we also have obligations to our funders because we've received funding for that. So we took all of those considerations and we came up with our plan for this summer. So we're doing, which was a roundabout way to get back to your question, I guess, Clive, about what we're working on now. So we tried to really look at how do we take a Shakespeare festival that is completely defined with watching plays outdoors under the stars, and how do we translate that to a digital space. So that's what we're working on now. And we've come up with a plan for 5 weeks of programming, which will be 4 weeks of kind of interactive sort of elements that aren't storytelling based. In other words, they're going to be, a retrospective of 10 years of Griffith Park, because this would have been our 10th summer at our venue. We have some roundtable discussions going on about theater and its place in the social justice movement. We've got sort of an event that's going to kind of focus on our audience and their experiences and how they, that kind of thing. And then we're going to be culminating with a new production of Romeo and Juliet, which will be partly live, partly recorded, partly puppets, some animation. So we're really just trying to figure out a way to kind of translate the idea of this sort of the park, where we try to have this kind of joyous community event, and to translate that idea of joyful communion in a digital space. So it's definitely challenging, but we all have to just get up in the morning and do something. So I guess that's what we've decided to do this year. Is that.
Yeah, sometimes it's, for those of you watching who don't know, planning a season and working on shows, they start years in advance, and all the planning that goes into it, and then for all of it to come to a complete halt, and then to not only just be like, okay, well, we have to give away our baby, which we worked so hard on already, and then you have to completely revamp either that show or a completely new season or completely new events. It's the work that goes into it, and you guys are doing such an awesome job with it, as is so many other people. But that's wonderful that you're continuing to produce content, and I know that for the SOS Fest, when we apply for shows to be produced, we get so many of them that say nope, can't be online, can't be streamed, can't be on Zoom. And so we have to go back to the drawing table, and so curating a season takes a lot more time, because you have more chance of it being rejected.
Definitely. Yeah. On that same note, I think this is the time when new artists, new playwrights can really expose themselves and expose their work out there. And we're doing at Antelope Valley College, we are actually taking a playwright that isn't published. She's doing it herself, and we're giving exposure to her work, which is very exciting. I'm thrilled to be supporting local playwrights and artists to promote their work at this time, because I think that's pivotal during any sort of pandemic or what have you.
Definitely. I love it's so inspiring to hear, about how we've all adapted, and, you're doing a full workshop classes for 3 weeks intensive, Suzanne, right now. And that's like incredible, because I just think about that. And it's like, as a student, I couldn't imagine acting, how to act for Zoom, for for the acting teachers, and how to how to collaborate and learn directing. And I remember when school shut down, I had a lot of friends at CSUN who contacted me. They're like, hey, do you have any thoughts? I have to do a directing scene on Zoom. Can you help me? And I was like, yeah, here's what I've been doing. Take what I have.
Yeah, I think that's kind of I'm hoping that through all of this is that we reconnect to each other. How are you doing this? How are you doing that? And I know conversations with other artisans that I've had, we're all compiling our sources together and trying to figure out, this is new. We're all trying to figure out how this works. We're all trying to figure out how to make this work and to still have a voice in today's world, which I think is utmost important. The students through Artisan Theater Company, they're on for 3 weeks every day, Monday through Friday, 10 to 2. We have a lunch hour, and we all eat lunch together. And they take improv, they take acting, they take musical theater. Musical theater is an 1.5 hour, 2-hour class, and they love it. My daughter's currently in it. She loves it. She's sad that next week is the last week. And I think it's just really nice for them to have an outlet to interact with other people, since we are so isolated, to have that connection with other people, even if it's through a screen. I think it's still very important to have that compassion towards another person, even though they're not in the room with you.
Do you want to talk more about your experience teaching in this format, or even if it's, based on what your daughter has experienced, because it's definitely you have to reinvent the way that you approach topics, and that you get the kids to still collaborate together, because they can't, they're not there. Do you want to talk more about that?
Sure. I think I'm going to separate it into 2 different portions, because I think the acting portion and directing portion is a completely separate component versus teaching. Teaching, when it happened in the spring, it was a lot of improv games is what I did, because I was directing, and now your show is canceled, but you still have to teach. I was supposed to technically stop teaching once the show was open, and I would just kind of do the 2 weeks of being there for my students, and then maybe we would have a postmortem talk back. We haven't, I taught all the way through the semester just to give them something to give them something for the rest of the week. And they seemed to really enjoy that. And the week that we didn't have it, I felt lost. So I lost the connections with my students. And they had messaged me and said that they felt the same. But they, as a class, have become much more connected because they all share something. But in terms of teaching, I think there's a lot more videos. There's a lot more, this is how to. So it may not necessarily be coming from me 100%, but I will go, here's the stuff you should be learning. And then we'll get together and have a huge class discussion. I'm still trying to figure out how to teach my 2 classes in the fall. I'm teaching costume design up at Antelope Valley College, and I think it's like design for the stage, which is like the very introduction of stage design at CSUN. So I'm still trying to figure out all of the ins and outs, and I haven't gone through a welcome to CSUN sort of thing yet. So I'm still trying to figure out how their platform works and what they're expecting. And that just got revealed to me yesterday. So within this next month, I have a lot of stuff to prepare to put online. In terms of acting, directing, and anything theatrical, I think it's rephrasing it to looking how you direct for a camera. Okay, you're going to pass that to the person. So you're going to pass it to your right. The person on the other side is going to pick it up and pass it to the left. And you have to be really clean when you start doing direction for the camera. And then most of what I've seen is that you take it then to an editor and then they edit it together so it all flows together and has a really beautiful flow. Then you present that. So in terms of a live teaching format, it's great. But in terms of giving it to an audience, I think it still needs the refinish, polish, sort of feel of an editor.
Yeah, I think that is such a good point. And when we were looking at what we were going to do this summer, we went that route where it is going to go through an editor, and then there'll be these live sections. And there have been so many wonderful live performances on Zoom. And then I've seen, wonderful archival footage from other theaters. And honestly, the archival stuff feels more like theater to me.
Yeah.
Because I'm seeing bodies and space interacting.
Right.
And Zoom sort of feels like, I'm using Zoom loosely, but any of those kind of live stream platforms is so specific to what it is. And I have to confess, I have such hope that we at a certain point will never have to do a Zoom performance again. I'm kind of loath to learn all those skills.
It's hard.
Because you're learning so much new stuff. And then I feel like I am like, where is the day I can say I don't need to do a Zoom performance? And so we're trying to also look at, can we as a company learn skills that then we can continue?
Yes.
So like we started a podcast. We happened to have an amazing staff person who had just joined our team who was a podcaster. So she's created this incredible podcast that she produces every couple of weeks. She brings out a new episode, and it's amazing because we can continue to devote resources to that podcast, regardless of what's happening. And I think, Suzanne, as you point out, there's all these wonderful new ways of connecting that I think we can carry on.
For sure.
But I do have to say, I have to manage a lot of sorrow, that we're not in space with people, not just in terms of art making, but in terms of everything that's happening. I want to be with people. That's me. I know my husband's very introverted. He's like, I don't know, I'm pretty good. Like, he's like, oh my God, being here, but for me, it's, so I think everybody is dealing with all of these like crazy up and down emotions right now. And so although I find a lot of joy in work, I am sort of also trying to think about what can I learn now that I can still be useful. Like, I think with education, there's so many wonderful things people are learning that are going to make a big difference down the road too. And the way I've been able to connect with people across, Jamie Marson, who teaches at Cal State Northridge, she had me on one of her classes, and we looped in one of my colleagues from Houston to also speak to the students. And I thought, well, why aren't we doing this all the time?
Right.
That kind of thing could have been happening all along. Why did I feel like these people moved out of the city and aren't part of my life anymore, aren't part of my resource network? So that's super exciting to me, those collaborations.
Yeah, I did that also with the cast with American Idiot. And I had speakers that were, a well-known director friend of mine came in and did a guest speak lecture sort of thing. And I was like, this is so much easier because all the paperwork to get people onto campus alone is really difficult. But if we do it this way, it is so much easier. It's streamlined, and it gave another heightened level to my class that I could easily do for them, and they got so much out of it, so much enrichment. One was about playwriting, another was about acting. We had the costume designer present her costume ideas, even though the show didn't happen. Here's what would have. And I think just to carry on those sorts of conversations and to keep art present was a huge lifesaver for them, that things just didn't end. It continued, different, but it continued.
Mm-hmm.
As professionals in the industry, and both of you are educators as well, and you've educated me a lot in my life. I've taken classes or been a part of projects with both of you. What do you feel is the hardest or most difficult challenge with keeping the professional life and the teaching life, or do you find it as an easier balance where they kind of mix together and make something different?
I don't teach very much anymore. I don't teach on campus at schools anymore. Mm-hmm. That was because it just became too hard for me to have two jobs. Like that just began to feel burdensome personally. But I will say I miss so much learning from students, because I always felt like I learned so much more than I ever taught. And that I definitely feel there's like that paucity in my life. And so I was going to go back to CSUN and direct a play this fall, which obviously I'm not doing now. So hopefully I'll get to do that again, because I do really miss working with emerging artists. I think is just such an exciting, it's a really exciting rehearsal room in a very different way. I mean, so I do really miss that, actually, now that you say that. Anyway.
I love working with emerging artists as well. I think their thirst for knowledge is really exciting, and it brings so much more to the production than, not to say that well-seasoned actors are not. Like when I work at the Geffen, it's one thing, and when I work at the Autry, it's another. Like every group of people bring in their different energies, but the thirst and the desire for knowledge and let's do it. Oh, what if we did? The excitement of new artists is really, it keeps me going, and it makes me go, oh yeah, you haven't learned this, or oh yeah, you haven't done it this way. That's really exciting. I will do probably 3 or 4 projects on top of teaching. So yeah, and I've got small kids. And so before quarantine, it was the whole thing of like, get it going. And okay, do we have a babysitter lined up? And oh, don't forget that we should probably have a date night because I haven't seen my husband. And you're opening this show, and then you're going to tech for this one, and you're constantly running around. When quarantine hit, I had to stop, which I'm still trying to figure out. I'm mentally bored, and it takes me a really long time now to fall asleep. And so, and not to mention worries of like, where's my next paycheck coming from? But I have taken that weird energy, and now I'm working on my different art. I started watercoloring cards for people, and I started to teach my daughter how to watercolor and how to do different use of different media, so markers, or if it's different chalks, or like I'm teaching my kids my art, and so they're getting stuff that my students would get, which is kind of directed me back towards how am I going to present this then in the classroom. So it's becoming a full circle sort of thing. I think quarantine's a really great time to figure out what's important and what's not, and maybe I don't take that 4th show. Maybe I only do 2 and then teach. I don't know. But it's been a really nice reconnection with my students in terms of just talking with people and my kids, and just talking with them and rediscovering what it is about art that I really enjoy. And then when I get the opportunity to do that in person with other people, really embrace it and cherish each moment of it.
I think that's the beauty of, I think that's what we all strive. I think you hit the nail on the head. I'm one to do millions of shows at the same time as well. Not as much as you both in the professional industry, I just feel like, it's the struggle that I love. And then I did in quarantine hit, you do feel like that heart, you want to put your heart back on stage, or back in the director's chair, or back in the designer chair. There's so many different jobs that make theater possible. And I think a lot of people forget about those little minutiae sometimes. And it's so exciting to hear both of you in the industry, you like upcoming artists. You don't use the term students, but you call them upcoming artists. And I think that's so beautiful, because it's true. It's the next generation of art.
Well, they're emerging. They're coming
emerging, yeah.
their own. And I think that's sort of blossoming into, eventually students become your equal. And so using the word student, I use kind of loosely, because eventually they will be my other collaborators. They could take my job. It's okay. And I tell them that, like, I want you to do these sorts of things, because otherwise I haven't done my job as an educator. I haven't done my job as somebody giving you a gift of knowledge. And if you can get to that point, I have succeeded. You have succeeded. And that's where I want you to be. So it's the immersion of the artist into society, into the community, to give back. I'm not here to take it all. I don't want it all. I want to give back.
As a student who's had professors that are like you, I certainly appreciate all of that, knowledge that has been passed down. And, it's only because of my professors that I'm able to co-produce a festival like this. It's because, I had the support that I needed to say, like, here are the tools, now go do something with it. And now here we are, I'm doing my best with it. So it's really inspiring to just, hear other professors who have the same sentiment, and who are still instilling that in their students, even when we can't be in a physical space together. But it's like the education behind it is so important, and it's so important that it keeps going even through now.
I think I want to end it on one last question, and I feel like this is something that, to me, I think it's like one question we never really get to in the regular MAINcast, which I think would be the most interesting from professionals in the industry, is what directors / writers / performers in the industry have inspired you to become an artist, especially a professional one who dedicates their life to giving people theater?
Such an enormous question.
I know, I'm sorry. Probably why we don't ask it a lot.
It's huge.
I will say that if I was thinking about, I could draw kind of a line of my experience with Shakespeare that started as, my first introduction to it was doing a play at college, and it kind of, that experience, I really attached to the language of the play. And then that became that was really my entry into that, which has now taken me the rest of, my life up until now. That's 90% of what I do is Shakespeare theater, classical theater. And then I would say that a moment or performance I saw, a director, since you asked about specific theater artists, Peter Brook directed a production of Hamlet with Adrian Lester, which I saw it was at the Brooklyn Academy of Music when I lived in New York. And that was just like revelatory in terms of both Adrian Lester's performance and as well as the sort of simplicity and minimalism of the direction, kind of really expanded my point of view about what storytelling that's as can look like in a way that where the simplicity actually makes your experience more complex. So that was very incredible to me. And then I think my next big journey with Shakespearean art making, since that's how I've translated the question in my head, that was not the question you asked, but that's the question I'm answering, was Peter Sellers, who directs a lot of opera, worked on a beautiful production that was much of the text was written by Toni Morrison, and it's called Desdemona, and it was an adaptation of Othello. And it's literally, I think those two things are the two best things I've ever seen in the theater. And so that again was this other kind of like turning point where, you know, what something could be, the possibilities were just suddenly exploded in my head about what something could be. If, you know, how you can approach a text, or how you can transform a text, or how theater can answer a time using very ancient words that are answering a contemporary time. And that was really profound, that sense of how it was just spanning these sort of centuries and geography, and it was just extraordinary. So those are there are two experiences. I don't think I've answered the question you actually asked, but I did answer it.
No, it's great.
Mm-hmm.
Peter Sellers is wonderful to work with. I worked with him
Oh.
in El Nino, which many years ago.
Wow. Yeah, that production was so, the Desdemona was like nothing, but it was so beautifully written. Everything about it was incredible.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, who's inspired me? Is that the question?
Yeah.
Either directors or playwrights or performers, or even just like experiences that you've had in the theater or with theater people that has inspired you.
Inspiration. There's a lot, because the more you experience, the more you get inspired, and you're like, yeah, I want to do that too, and that, and it becomes this huge poo-poo platter of stuff you just want to shove in your mouth and consume. I have worked very closely with Anne Kloss Farley, who works down in Los Angeles a lot, and she's an amazing costume designer. And I worked with her on 99-cent only shows, which is all the stuff that was built from the 99-cent only stores. And you're making costumes and everything out of found objects. And that was very inspirational to work alongside with her. I think I did it 2 or 3 years. But to work with Anne Kloss Farley has been life-changing. And I call her my mentor. And I still, like, through the whole quarantine, we've been reconnecting. And she's phenomenal.
She's amazing. We just worked with her, and she's incredible. Yeah.
She is a powerhouse of art and creativity, and I love her. And she's a mom, and the fact that she is also a mom and an artisan, and bringing, you know, every single facet of life with her, and still doing it and putting it in the highest level of awesomeness. That's where I want to be. In terms of directors, I've worked with Eric Idle, who's very awesome in how he communicates with people and gets them to do very funny things, even though it seems absurd. It's funny. And I think the one show that totally transformed me as an artist was Slava's Snow Show. And it's these Russian clowns. If you haven't seen this show, it's amazing. It's these Russian clowns performing, and there isn't really language. There's gibberish, but there's not really language. And just to see them interact, and to have, you can feel what they're feeling, and that emotion that goes beyond language, the artistry that goes beyond language and still captivates everybody, that show transformed how I see visually. They had it snowing, and then it eventually snowed into the audience. And there was a ball that one of the clowns played with at the end. And then eventually balls came into the audience, and they were these huge, I would say 4 foot, 5 foot huge beach balls. And the audience started to play like little kids. And they were there for a good half hour, 45 minutes after the show ended. So much so that in the back seat of the theater was one of the clowns, half undressed, just sitting there, enjoying to watch the audience. So the show flipped. The perspective of the show flipped. And I walked up to him, because it's me, and I have no shame. And I was like, hi, this show is beautiful. And he said, thank you. And I said, so what is your favorite part of the show? And he said, this, to see people play as children and to enjoy the moment where they are currently at. And that show transformed me. And I saw it in Denver It's come back. It played at UCLA a few years ago. I brought my husband. I think we were just dating at the time, and I was like, "You have to see the show. You want to understand me. You have to see the show," because that show transformed me, and it that sense of creativity, and then giving that gift away, and then enjoying what that gift then produced was just so gorgeous. And I think that's where live theater really, why I stay with it, is the gift that keeps going.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you so much for sharing your stories. And I think like it didn't, to me, like the way you both answered the question is perfect, because you both answered it in your way. And that's the most important thing about being an artist, is finding your path and making theater and making something creative with people you love and care about. And through the discussion and the arguments and the juggles and everything, it's just always fun. And so I just want to give you both a chance really quick before we end this episode to PR anything that you have coming up, or that you want to kind of give knowledge of to the audience, and then we'll close out the show, and that'll be our 9th MAINcast. So Melissa or Suzanne, whoever wants to start their
Sure.
PR.
So we our programming for the summer is going to start on August 8th, and you can find out more at iscla.org. The Romeo and Juliet will be live streaming over Labor Day weekend. And Nick Heel-Pie, who I believe you're having on one of your shows, he's actually playing Romeo. So you can ask him about that as well. And he's also the cinematographer, so he's doing it all for this production. So please check us out. Everything we're doing this summer, our summer stuff is always free, so you can just log in and watch a whole bunch of different stuff.
Thank you.
Artisan Theater Company is the newest theater company. I'm one of the co-founding members of it. We just started it during quarantine. We're just about to wrap that up, but there will be several sessions that will continue on. And since schools may not necessarily be in session, that will continue on, and to give the students, high school, middle school on up, an opportunity to continue to explore theater, even if it's not being offered through the schools. Other than that, Antelope Valley College is doing their show. I am not allowed to release that as of yet, but I can send Stephen some information to pass on.
Please do.
We will push it this fall. And other than that, my next booking is with the Geffen in August of next year. So that will be the next round for me as of yet. So I know University High School, one of the high schools I work with, is planning stuff to be online, and I will try to figure out when that is and also pass that on to you, Stephen. And then I just got a job offer yesterday. I'm not quite sure of the logistics yet, so I will keep you posted of all this. There's a lot going on. It got really busy yesterday. So I'm excited, and I'm excited that theater is still continuing, even if it's through the lens. But it will be live again.
So do me a favor, audience. Please check out the Independent Shakespeare Theater Company, and please check out the Artisan Theater Company. Check out Melissa Chalsma and Suzanne Wakefield and their careers. You've heard from two amazing professionals in the industry. Join us next week for another in-depth conversation with two more professionals from the industry. We're switching to the other side, from the director, producer, actor, and costume designer to just two actors. So we're really excited to kind of jump to the other side of theater. And please join us for You're the Best, our wacky comedy talent show for the city of Santa Clarita, with your wacky host, Even Steven, as well as our other shows that are for the Main, such as New Heights and our SOS Theater Fest, which will come back in August. So Calliope, if you want to close us out, we're good to go.
Yeah, I just want to thank you, Melissa and Suzanne, so much. You guys provided such wonderful stories and such great information. I was so lucky to talk to you both today. So thank you so much. Join us for the SOS Fest starting in August 28th. And thank you, Stephen, of course, for expanding this MAINcast so that we can do it over the summer until the next festival starts. So thank you all so much for being here, and we will see you soon.
Thank you, guys. Bye.
Have a wonderful one.